Good morning. Let's continue with our series on how to maximize learning. Today, we're not necessarily talking about specifically groups or one-to-one teaching. We're talking about the other challenges that students face in their daily lives, and as such, how we should consider this when we choose groups or one-to-one sessions for them. Let's face it, even if two students have exactly the same learning style, it doesn't automatically mean that they are suited to be in the same group or suited for a one-to-one session or suited for anything in particular. As teachers, it's our responsibility to actually understand the challenges that that student is facing and be able to tailor their learning accordingly. This is a luxury that is not necessarily afforded in the modern day classroom, but it's one that should possibly be considered as a given. Um, an example that I could give, which is often given in my signature speech, is that of myself. I was one of those students that could possibly be considered having an improbable beginning for a remarkable outcome. I had very great childhood trauma, and I had challenges on a daily basis for the best part of 10 years, and I didn't talk about it. So that could have led to my teachers just thinking that it was not going to happen for me. It could have led to them giving up on me. It could have led to many destinations which are far, far away from where I am today. It was only when we got to a certain point in my story that a teacher finally noticed the difficulties that I was having. And on that day, I was off to truant as I always did. I was having such difficulties that I just didn't attend lessons. Can you imagine the gaps that that could have created for me had that teacher not noticed and not taken it in hand? Now, that was some years ago, and I'm not going to reveal how many years ago by any stretch of the imagination. But nowadays, teachers don't necessarily have that, let's call it a luxury of being able to have that working pastoral connection to each of their students to be able to question why they're behaving in a certain way and take action on that. There's a lot of things that stand in the way. There's policies, there's laws, there's a lot of things, but it is so important that there is a time, and that time is now, for us to start actually making the connection with our students. It's equally as important as creating the learning environment. If we know what our students are facing in their daily life, then we're able to say in a more constructive way to them, well, why don't we try doing this? That way they feel part of the process and they will engage more in the process. This is what has given me several levels of success. I work a lot with nurture groups, and nurture groups are known for their not wanting necessarily to go to school and not seeing the benefits of it because they have difficulties in learning, they have difficulties in the mainstream classroom, they have difficulties in general. But when they come to me, I make them each feel special, make them each feel that I want to know about you. I want to know what makes you tick, and I will bend towards that as far as I can to make this work for both of us, right? Because I do get a really big happy buzz whenever a student is reached and I know that they're on the right road to achieving their remarkable outcomes. In general, it does have to take a form. It will take a form of either one-to-one groups, or small groups, large groups. But there's steps that I think are essential that should be undertaken before we take them there. We shouldn't just say they have a learning need, therefore they should be in a small group. Why don't we address that learning need? Why don't we think about how we could keep them in the classroom while addressing that learning need? For example, students with dyslexia, they don't necessarily need to be in a nurture group. They are, the students with dyslexia that I've taught are some of the most articulate ever that I've come across, able to critically work through most ideas and present them. They have difficulty possibly in writing the answers, but I'm speechless as to some of the outcomes that I've seen. They don't need to be in a small group. What they need to be in is a group of their peers who have equal abilities, who have a bit of empathy, who can understand each other and work together to achieve outcomes. So my point is today is that as educators, perhaps we need to start thinking more about the students too, not just that they have to have an education, but what are they facing? What are their challenges that they have to face in order to engage fully in their education? Because after all, that's why we're here. Have a good day.